to go ahead and suggest, since we've got folks here. Very interested in some of the items that we have on here that the board would entertain the idea of adding the citizen comment limited to 2 minutes.
Also for consideration, I wanted to add a new business item, discussion of the UDO process and if we want to postpone or move forward. And I believe, Michelle, are you prepared to kind of talk to us about what next steps look like to get us through completion of that project?
Okay, we got two things. Let's deal with first one, then we'll deal with yours. It has to be unanimous in order to adjust the agenda. Anybody want to put on the citizen comment?
Yeah, I'm fine to make that motion to add citizen comment.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now to your request. Make that.
Do you have any
request, and then we'll vote.
Okay. To add a new business item to discuss the UDO process.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous too, so. Before consent agenda, then we will go ahead and do citizen comment. We don't have a sign up sheet, so if you want to come up. Name, address, 2 minutes. Yes.
Do I just stay?
Yeah, just sit right.
Oh, thank you.
Give your name and address to keep,
Yes.
and you got 2 minutes.
My name is Gail Young. I live at 1105 Blueview Drive here in Black Mountain. I'm extremely interested in understanding more about what's going on with the, I've just been reading about it recently, the proposed data center. And every town that I've read about in the last few years that has had a data center move into their area has found their citizens lose access to reliable, high-quality water. The data center gets prioritized over the needs of the citizens. But I was very pleased to read about one town recently, they happen to be in Texas of all places, who actually cut off the water and sewer access to a new data center because they could not get to their satisfaction information on what the usage and rates of usage were going to be. And the only way they could control it was to stop it dead in their tracks until they can resolve those issues. So what I'm hoping to hear from all of you, not necessarily tonight, is a plan, a good detailed plan about how we will manage the use of our resources so that the citizens aren't finding that we're drained to the benefit of a private business or nonprofit. I don't care what they're called. The other element corollary to that is use of electrical power, which again, the town can help manage by limiting access to water and sewer until the new entity has a valid approach and constraints placed on them for how much electrical power they're going to steal from us. My power still goes down routinely.
Very good. Thank
Thank
you for
you.
your comments. That is coming up under presentations later on in the evening.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak?
Yeah, just really quick, Richard Hudson, 106 Pleasant Drive Circle. Please open up the front side. Thank you.
Not seeing you. Oh, yes, please come on up.
Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Eddie Frizzell. I'm the owner of Appalachian Tool and Machine. I live 600 Laurel Avenue in Black Mountain on the golf course. 50 years ago, my family owned a business on the golf course. We called it the 19th hole when they built the new building there, which is now the Green Tea Grill. My family was the first one to operate that business. I've watched this golf course for 50 years, that's 5 decades. I've lived on the golf course, worked on the golf course. Now being a business owner, we build aircraft, engines for GE. It's a multi-million-dollar business. It's imperative to my business to be able to invite men and women to Black Mountain. And I've done it for decades. I say, come to Black Mountain, a beautiful golf course. I mean, it's a treasure, Black Mountain Golf Course. And just dozens of people over the decades have came here and spent countless dollars on a restaurants or hotels, motels, and spent that here in Black Mountain. They love it. The golf course, it's a treasure to Black Mountain. It increases the price of our real estate and just wonderful people. So anyway, I just want to tell you guys how important that golf course is to this community. I'll stop there.
Thank you.
Thank you for hearing me. God bless you.
Anybody else?
Yes, sir. My name is Mary Merritt and I live at 102 Llama Way here in Black Mountain. I grew up here. I grew up on the golf course, but I'm here to talk about some other things. I showed up today because I've been reading so much negativity and I wanted to hear what the business was really going on. And I know that our town is responsible for our core services, fire, police, public works. Without that, we don't have much but chaos. Okay, so I would encourage you to find solutions to take care of those core services, because when seconds count and fire and police are minutes away, it makes a big difference. And I don't want to be a victim of that, having come up in the law enforcement arena myself. I also am here to support the golf course. And I can tell you, those 17 middle schoolers that came out for the middle school team, as opposed to 3 or 4 last year, will all make an impact in our community. And while it's not reaching hundreds or thousands, it can and will again once you bring it back online. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. Anyone else? If not, we can move to the consent agenda. Richard.
Here we got 2 items. We got a few items there for you. The first one is to consider a resolution naming me as the authorized representative to submit disbursement request forms to the Division of Water Infrastructure, since all the other former ones are gone. Item 2B is the town still has some pieces of equipment that should be replaced from the storm. One funding opportunity is through the USDA. So this motion authorizes us to file an application with them for potential funding. And the third one is an amendment to the audit contract. The last one you had, they didn't meet the deadline in that audit contract, so it has to be amended. Again, it has been submitted to the LGC, so they've got it and everything's fine, but we can't issue final payment until we amend the contract and it's approved by LG.
And remind us
Which
that,
they will.
sorry, the deadline was not met. Because of something we did, because of something they,
It's because of them, and they had to do 2 federal audits,
okay,
which, which added more time, and it actually added another about $4,000 and some dollars to the actual cost of the audit, because we had to do that second federal audit.
Just one thing,
$500.
assuming that passes, need to make a correction on the governmental unit there. Spell my name right. It's EL. It's listed EL instead of OL, please.
Where's that at?
On the
The second.
signature
Page two
page,
in the-
second
the-
governmental unit.
Yeah, we'll get that.
Can you give us some background on this, on our? First of all, if you could give a figure of what we lost in equipment. I'm assuming this is vehicles.
Yeah, it's probably got better. Yeah, what those were.
Yeah.
I can speak to that a little bit. So we had about $1.3 million worth of vehicles we lost. Insurance paid us out about $752,000. So this is trying to fund the gap between those insurance costs for the value of the vehicles that we lost versus the replacement costs to actually fund new vehicles.
So I'm hearing insurance, so that's insurance from the state, probably league of municipalities. I guess.
It's my insurance carrier.
So what about FEMA? Is FEMA not participating in this, or did they decline?
So that project with FEMA, once they saw that insurance was covering what they were covering, FEMA zeroed out that project and they said, we're not going to give you any additional funding for vehicles.
Other than just, was there any explanation other than the fact that we're just not gonna do it?
They sent us a denial letter and I think we tried to appeal if I remember correctly, and that just didn't go much of anywhere, but this USDA funding is for disaster assistance, so it should fund it where FEMA didn't.
Okay.
I think FEMA won't cover things that are covered by the insurance. If the insurance carrier is saying that they're covering the cost of those vehicles, then FEMA won't pay additional for
And
that.
what FEMA would have paid you would have been less than you actually got, from the insurance companies that are going, they won't pay you anything up above what the insurance company pays you anyway.
So we have replaced all those vehicles, correct?
No,
No, we've replaced several, most of them being sanitation vehicles and a police vehicle. So the ones that were for critical services needed at that time.
What kind of figure is that?
So for those already purchased, we have 884,000,
How much?
884.
884. So we're short, right now.
Yes.
Looks like about 132,000.
Mhm. And I've confirmed with this program that they'll be able to reimburse us for those costs as well.
But since we have those vehicles, that means that we've gone ahead and anteed up. We paid $132,000.
and we hadn't purchased any of these vehicles yet. And once you purchase the garbage trucks and a couple of other vehicles, those are the only vehicles that have been purchased up to this.
Yeah, but I thought he said that was 854,000 for that.
And that's what it was for those garbage trucks and.
Yeah.
There's one more.
It's
vehicle we
one
purchased.
police vehicle.
Please.
Yeah.
So I mean, if the insurance paid 752, there's a difference there, 32.
And you spend $800 and some thousand dollars on.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to just get at is that we have spent our money.
Yes,
We spent 132,000 of our money. Okay.
yes.
Just wanted just to see.
And this grant would not only potentially reimburse us for that 132, cover that, but also allow us to purchase the other vehicles that are.
Yes.
And that may be a combination of grant and loan. And we don't have those in specific numbers yet, so.
But this allows us to find that out.
Yeah.
So we can then.
Yeah.
Yep.
Approve or deny that.
And
I
what
hope
is,
it would all be.
and what is kind of the time frame on this? I mean, I realize that the application goes, and like most applications, it has an incubation period. It
Right.
sits in one basket for 2.5 weeks.
So sort of in response to that, we don't have an exact timeline for it. This is Land of Sky is helping us with this application. And we're one of the first ones in right now. So it's first come, first serve as far
Are
as
we
the
getting with
funding.
Mary over there?
It's a combination of Mary and a few other people. for helping us with it.
Because I met her last night at a function, and so I just wanted we were talking about how that she's gonna come in and help you. Yeah.
Yeah.
With this, so I think that's good.
So we're trying to be first ones there as far as getting our application in early. So
Well, I'll just have to say it's water over the dam, but I had presented. Archie was there, Brian was there. He presented to the staff at that time applications that they could be making to all these agencies. This was a year and a half ago. Unfortunately, it was never done. All right. I got any questions on the consent agenda? All right, if not, do I hear a motion? To
I would-
accept the consent
Yeah,
agenda?
I would move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
What do we got next?
My first presentation, I think this is one of the burning questions is what can we do with the Lakeview Center? You hired a firm to do an evaluation of the building, and he's here this evening. He's gonna let you know what our options are.
Sure.
Well, thank you for having me and allowing me to kind of present our findings. So just seeing the background, I'll try to go quick and not totally summarize the report. It's a 100-year-old building, was built, coincidentally, it's about the same time North Carolina's first building code was released. The building's been renovated several times. It's encompassed what was an open ground floor into a conditioned ground floor, encompassed existing decks, new decks have been built. And also, several renovations since the time. There've been numerous floods, and your actually floodplain was mapped and found that that building does sit in the current floodplain. So it's flooded, what we've heard 2 times in the last 8 years, but it's in every building where it's located, there will be.
Is it in the floodplain or is it in the floodway?
Is in the floodplain as it is mapped right now. It's a limited mapping area, so there's limited information, but it is, as we've interpreted it, it is in the floodplain. In terms of code, it's an old building, but it has been grandfathered. There have been some 12 or 13 code updates to the North Carolina Building Code since then. And the general interpretation of that is as long as a building is legally occupied, when a new code comes out, old buildings aren't code deficient, they're grandfathered in. And as a continuously occupied building, it has received yearly inspections. I understand there's posted occupancies. So it should be code compliant. And so the questions were, what are our considerations for next steps moving forward? That was a lot of what the report talked about, but I'll go through the main 2 considerations that I'd say you're balancing is that the owner of the building moving forward and what's financially responsible with the building, and then make some recommendations for next steps to get to specific answers to the path forward. The first one is its location in the floodplain. Building existed before the floodplain. Floodplain was introduced sometime in its lifetime. The way your flood damage prevention standards and your UDO read are that buildings that were previously existing in a floodplain before it's was mapped can remain. But once they receive substantial improvement, they need to be brought into conformance with the floodplain. Substantial improvements defined as 50 work that amounts to 50% of the value of the building. For this building, $750,000 of work would require to be brought into compliance with the floodplain. And if it was brought into compliance, you would essentially lose functionality of the ground floor. The ground floor would have to be, your 2 options are either become a totally waterproof structure, which is not really feasible with the building built into the side of the hill, or, the cost to waterproof a ground floor completely is not realistic for the conditions of the building. Or the alternate way is it become a, similar to the ground floor of a beach house. Open storage area, you would have to have all waterproof finishes down there. Water would have to be able to flow in and out. And the way the ordinance reads, it could be used for storage of on-site maintenance equipment, but not nothing more functional than that. That would be a rather without a detailed estimate, expensive renovation to lose function of the ground floor. The other consideration, just something that was asked of me, is should the building have any life safety systems, a sprinkler system? As an existing building for its age, it's been grandfathered. It has posted occupancies that limit, people filling the building shoulder to shoulder. It has to maintain egress. For the existing regulations for existing buildings, it should be fine as it is. If it was built today, it would be built differently. And so, I'd recommend keeping up with that and making sure that, I know it's occupied right now. The ground floor is closed off. I assume there's been a temporary certificate of occupancy, something issued where they've made safe electrical, mechanical, plumbing. The unfinished spaces can't be used. There's no drywall in the stairs, so it wouldn't be safe to go downstairs, but it looks like there's 2 egresses upstairs, with exit signs, handrails, so can be safely occupied. So
You say it can be safely occupied.
I-
You say can
Yeah.
or can't?
it can.
It can.
It can.
Okay.
I believe it is. So what are next steps to moving forward with the structure to get the ground floor finished out? The first thing I would recommend or will need to be done is a survey to establish a base flood elevation for the facility, so we can understand where zero is, where by the floodplain your likely water levels are, so we can understand what improvements need to be made for the facility and the area. Part of why I recommend that as the first step. A lot of times surveys, there's going to be a lead time to get a surveyor out there. Additional things I would look at why that's going on are, is there, possibility of FEMA funding for the structure, for the improvement, or maybe even funding that could be put toward, reallocated toward another improvement. Sometimes they'll do cap funding for, it would cost this much to do it, but you could roll this into another project or facility if needed. And I would look at, can the building be insured? If you're going to refinish the ground floor, make some improvements to the building, is that insured when the building inevitably floods again? It sounds like the building has been inspected and there is a temporary certificate of occupancy. If that hasn't been done, I'd recommend talking to the authority that has jurisdiction just to make sure those inspections are done in the building.
They've done it, and I think they can have an occupancy up to 99 people based on
It is.
current condition.
Sure. So it sounds like they've determined a limit.
In the basement, correct.
In the occupied floor right now.
Staggered,
Upstairs.
Not downstairs.
No, it looks like the deck and stairs and the front entrance are all open, so it should be safe as long as you're occupying that top floor. And then what to do for replacing. There's this threshold that I'd recommend keeping your eye on. That's the $750,000 of a project where if you cross that, you have to come into compliance with the floodplain, which you start losing functionality of the building. So I'd say as you're planning for the repair renovations of the ground floor, being very careful about that number. And so along with design for what to contract and have renovated on the ground floor, also some careful estimating to make sure steering clear of that $750,000 number. Then, that would be for immediately occupying, getting the building reused. Even if a new building was to come in the mix, that would be a longer term. So I'd recommend proceeding with the survey to get to there. In the long term, I'd consider the typical useful life of a building. The building's now 100 years old, exists in a floodplain, a number of grandfathered requirements, and even maintenance on the building, I would say at this point is starting to amount. An observation, it looks like the deck has been repaired a number of times, the handrail filled in with lattice. It's probably coming close to time to replace the deck. Looks like the siding could use some painting. Looking around, there's certain areas where there's rotted boards, damaged siding boards that need to be replaced. So comes the question, do we paint the building and replace certain parts of the siding, or do we replace all the siding? And if you replace all the siding, do you replace what's behind it? You can certainly do partially spot areas, but siding's the great example of 5 years from now, you'll need to paint it again and have more spot places to replace, and then again down the road.
With the maintenance cost count towards that $750,000, if it costs you
So
$50,000 to replace the siding, are you down to 700,000?
So I would coordinate some of those details, especially with what work has been done and what, what counts as repairs or improvements and what counts as doesn't count toward that. There's a kind of a 1-year time limit in the ordinance. And it kind of says by project, exactly how that's interpreted. I would have to coordinate with the floodplain administrator in your zoning department to determine that exactly.
I mean, we could use the bottom facility, if we wanted to put offices in there, shoot rocket and do all that. As long as you didn't go over the $750,000, but you risk knowing that it has flooded in the past and it could flood in the future. So I'm assuming you got to be careful of what you put down there, but
Does that change insurance rates?
That would, you would want to talk to your surety. I know sometimes there's, rate considerations or even
Yeah.
is it insurable?
That would
to
be
do what
vital
counts.
to know.
There is through the FEMA Public Assistance Program, which often helps with buildings like this, they have considerations for, they call it hazard mitigation. And so it would be in refinishing that ground floor, what things can we do to mitigate future hazard and make either, if it was to flood again, cost of repairs or speed of repairs quicker. Things like instead of putting down wood floor, can we seal the concrete? Something that won't be damaged if water flows through. What kind of exterior siding finish can we use that if submerged up to 2 feet, 3 feet, 5 feet, would not need to be replaced? What is our, does it make sense to come back with wood cabinets or could we use freestanding stainless steel counters? So if it floods again, it's a matter of rinsing things off. So there's certain considerations and the FEMA PA program has a process for presenting and approving, cost adjustments. If it would cost this to put back vinyl floor, that's at risk. It costs this to put a sealed concrete floor along those lines. So definitely in making interior improvements, I would recommend those considerations of how do we build back, get the functionality we need for the lifespan we're working on at the cost available.
So basically what I'm summarizing from what you're saying then is that there are ways to do this. Probably it could be close to 750, but let's just say that we're under, just
Sure.
just to be sure. So that by going ahead and adhering to some of these things, that we could go ahead and renovate that place. May not have insurance on it, but we could renovate it and then use it like it was used before.
Absolutely.
That is a dear structure to the people of this town. I've been here for 76 years. I probably spent more time in and around that building than anyone in this room, except maybe Ed. But I mean, to think that we could not go ahead and get this place back up and running, I think is a bridge too far. I think we're going to have to be thinking of things like heating, air conditioning. We put splits when we put them up high to where the flood waters never did hit. And, going ahead and getting, I think that flood was what, 4.5 feet in there, 5 feet. Trying to think what. Anyway, it was somewhere close to that. It wasn't full 8 feet. It wasn't completely full.
Sure.
So that if we go back in with materials, like I said, the floor, just simply paint the floor. Not sure the seniors are really gonna care too much about whether they're standing on hardwood or painted wood or vinyl. So first thing is a survey. And what is the function? What would be the function of the survey?
So one part is per the flood damage prevention part of the UDO. When you're working in the floodplain, you need to establish where the flood levels are. The other part would be, we would want to locate, similar to painting the floor, locate all devices as possible above the anticipated flood level with some contingency space in there. So this would help us understand, is your flood height, on the architectural side, is your floodplain at 6 inches or is it at 4 feet? So we can make those considerations. It will be required as part of permitting and getting that floodplain development permit.
So instead of having electrical outlets at the 18, we could have them at 4 feet.
Sure.
So that we don't have that particular issue.
Yeah, I would do the same thing with mechanical systems. If there's a water heater, considering locating it upstairs and plumbing down, if there's furnace, any of those type things, how can we
So after
minimize
the survey. Give us,
after survey? So after ordering the survey, I would ask your surety questions about the insurance. Talk to,
Add that before the FEMA check-in that you have here, because I noticed you didn't have insurance on the kind of next step. So I wonder where that would go.
so that note may have missed that. I would have the conversations with FEMA and insurance in parallel. I think FEMA's gonna ask about insurance, like you were talking about. They don't cover things that are. I know sometimes grant funding is penalized if you didn't have insurance. I would confirm that with your FEMA group.
Yeah.
But so those are probably two, order the survey in parallel, have these FEMA and insurance conversations. At the same time, if you have, it's not insured, it is certified for occupancy by your building department, which I believe it is. We heard 99 persons, that would have come from that. And then work toward designing the renovation. You'll need it's a commercial project. I assume it'll be bid, work toward getting a set of design documents. And also as part of that design process, I would conduct some detailed estimating just to keep an eye on that $750,000 limit.
and the design document could be designed to accommodate flooding.
Correct. And FEMA will work with, through the public assistance program, that hazard mitigation of, you had $5 a square foot floor in here, you're proposing $10, but we're doing it to prevent future damage. So what's the cost benefit analysis? We'd say that would be part of the design, and estimating would be getting through that FEMA funding.
So we would have to get with the design firm. More than likely in order to do this,
Yes.
come up with a game plan.
Yeah, a design firm and coordinate with FEMA.
I don't know if you've seen the news as of late this afternoon, but both the House and the Senate have reached a compromise. And DHS will be funded, hopefully in the next couple of days. So FEMA should go back to work.
Excellent. So. Sounds good. Anything else?
Here's our next,
That was it.
stand by the board would be for the survey work. And I think we had an estimated cost of that. You remember what that was, or?
I do not know.
I didn't see that in the background.
It may have come from the consulting firm as opposed to the architect. What the back, you don't know what it was, man?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Would we see that?
Until you had things.
But we got that information.
Can't have. That's on.
Yeah, we'll get that to you at the April meeting.
Okay. Yeah, I'm grateful that we're starting to move from our short-term plan for this building to be able to talk about long-term plans. To me, knowing FEMA support and insurance is vital, because I know there'll be another council up here at some point that is having to do maintenance or whatever, or, God forbid, dealing with a natural disaster, and so to set them up to not have insurance on all of our buildings is really a shame, I think.
Well, this one particular building could be an exception. Because of
Well,
its
we can
historical,
disagree,
because of its historical significance.
and it's okay to disagree about that.
But I can tell you, you don't have $750,000 to put
No.
towards the building, so.
Now, having been in building, I can think we can do it for less than 700.
So again, OPM, other people's money would hopefully come through for us, so.
Richard, do you know, or Matt, maybe, I assume we have a pending FEMA project with this building already, is that?
Now, they gave us some funds, I think, but we can go back and ask for it to be an improved project, which would bring in the additional hazard mitigation funds, maybe, so.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, we'll find that out. And my person with Land and Sky, and we're finding out she is being an exceptional help, and I think she can help us figure it out, so.
Great.
Good. We talk about Mary.
I'm the Aaron Hughes. She's the one taking over all of our FEMA projects, but she's all, she is, and she knows what she's doing. I think she's gonna be a huge help to us.
What a gift.
Good.
Okay, do I hear anything from the council to go ahead and let's move forward on getting a survey?
And we'll bring that back to you at the April meeting.
Thank you.
I think we talked about it, quote, I'm not sure if we have got one, I'll go back to look, so.
All right, good enough. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ask, I have a special request. I'd like to ask if you would ask Mr. Hudson to turn the flashlight feature off on his phone. I don't mind him videoing, it's just blinding me when I have to look at it.
Yeah.
Can maybe some help.
Would you like some help?
Sure. And it'd be nice if y'all talk up. Say nothing.
Are the mics on today, Wesley?
They are.
Okay.
I know, I'll go out and lean back.
Oh, you got it back on.
It's back on.
There you go.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item is a presentation regarding establishing a limited build upon area for, Bill, we've got Michelle and Phillips here to make that presentation to you.
Thank you. I'm gonna give you all these and you pass them around. It's just a map that Anne will be referencing and, print out of tonight, which one we do it.
Thank you, council and mayor. Appreciate your time this evening. I am basically just here to bring an idea forward for your consideration, and it's not a fully fleshed out idea. It's just something that I've noticed that may warrant some consideration.
And before she starts, both the items that we're bringing you tonight are things that are emerging issues. And our purpose of this is to try to have conversations with you all about things before they become issues that we need to be reactive about. So this is us trying to move forward in a more proactive approach around things that may be impacting our community moving forward.
Thank you, Michelle. So I'll go ahead and I did write out an outline here for myself so I don't lose track of all the points I wanted to present to you. So I'll just read from it and we'll go from there. We welcome a variety of different housing types as we look into the future and think about what will be needed for housing as well as for environmental protection and protection of existing infrastructure. I come before you today to discuss potential options for addressing infill development so that this type of development can proceed without unintended damaging effects. Since I have worked for the town of Black Mountain since November 2021, I've seen an increase in the development of small lots. So larger lots are being subdivided as property owners see the development demand in Black Mountain and are looking for financial options for themselves and their beneficiaries. Some of these created lots are of the minimum size allowed by our current zoning regulations, and that differs by zoning area, but some of them are 5,000 square feet to an eighth of an acre being the smallest, and that's 5,445 square feet. The issue of infill without a limit on impervious surface or built upon area can't be addressed with the phase 2 stormwater ordinance, since these smaller lots allow development that would maximize the square footage of the lot while still staying below even when we had the most stringent threshold that DEQ would previously allow us, which is 5,000 square feet. Many building permits for single family homes are now on parcels that are less than half an acre. That means that unless the parcel is part of a larger common plan of development, the project would not require a stormwater permit. Additionally, when we used the stormwater ordinance to address construction that created 5,000 square feet of impervious area, it affected single family residences with a financial burden that we sought to alleviate when we brought the ordinance into alignment with DEQ's rules back in May of 2025. So more infill development will continue as larger lots are subdivided into small lots. Black Mountain is attracting a large volume of development, and approximately about 85% of our development is residential. And these smaller lots are desirable to people as they continue to move to Black Mountain. If we don't address the current regulations that don't limit the amount of impervious surface on a lot, small lots may be developed with almost no permeable surface for water to soak in. And this would increase stormwater issues downslope from this new kind of development. There would be a cumulative effect of the stormwater runoff from lots that have very little, if any, permeable surface for rain to soak in. And this runoff would affect property owners and renters downslope many of which are older homes, which are not elevated on crawl spaces or protected against runoff. And here I list the minimum lot sizes per zoning district that are 1/8 of an acre or less. This was updated in 2010. It's UR8, 1/8 of an acre for major subdivision or non-residential, and as small as 5,000 square foot for a residential lot. HB8 and LI8, both the minimum of would be 1/8 of an acre for residential. And additionally, there are pre-existing lots throughout the town, so created prior to 2010, that are 1/10 of an acre or somewhere in that neighborhood, around 1/10 of an acre. Construction of accessory dwelling units or ADUs on developed parcels, as well as creation of the required parking, could also lead to the same type of issue, reducing permeable space on these small lots. Every proposed dwelling unit requires a site plan that shows room for at least 2 vehicles to park off-street. So a single-family home with an ADU must show room for at least 4 vehicles to park off-street. We want to provide and retain opportunities for different types of housing responsibly with protection measures in place. So I want to then switch to this map here that I asked our GIS technician to put together for us here so we'd have an idea of the scale. And there is a table at the bottom that may be the most helpful since this is really zoomed out picture. And it shows that there are 539 lots currently that are between 0.01 and 0.115 acres. 1/8 of an acre is 0.125, which would be captured in that second category. So about 1/10 of an acre up to 1/8 of an acre, there's 89 in that category. The bulk are under 1/2 an acre. And that was something that we tried to address when raising the disturbance to 1/2 an acre so that we wouldn't be burdening single-family homeowners with stormwater permit requirements. So you can kind of see the breakout of all the different size lots that we have. And for those lots that we have in existence that are less than 1/8 of an acre or less, that's 628 lots. And this just before I go on what I've written here, this issue came to my attention because I had several people contact me that ask, you know, I'm living next to a new construction project. I see that it's permitted, you know, I've asked you about that, but are they allowed, is there a limit to how much they're allowed to pave? Because I'm downhill from them and I'm worried about the stormwater runoff. And there is no way to address that currently for anything of this lots of this size, 1/10 of an acre, 1/8 of an acre. We don't have a limit of impervious surface, like anything like a percentage of built upon area. So I just wanted to bring this to your consideration since I've heard from the community a couple of times about this. And
The concern that we have, we're obviously running out of real estate. There are not tons of lots or things available. And one of the things that was identified in Black Mountain was the intention to diversify our housing stock. We want to provide opportunities for smaller housing, ADUs, things like that. The majority of these kinds of issues are covered as it relates to multifamily housing, but we have and really identified this gap as it relates to single family housing. And a classic example is if you look around in a lot of parts of town, you have homes that were built in the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, kind of small cottage style homes. If they're down the hill from someone that does a build like this with no impervious surface, there are runoff concerns that immediately start to impact that downhill neighbor. And so this was an intentional issue that wasn't considered when this was adjusted a couple of years ago. So we wanted to have this conversation with you all and kind of get some direction from you on how to move forward. And sorry to interrupt.
no, that's perfect. Yeah, and exactly. We wanted to get direction from you about it, just to bring this to your attention. And there are a couple options I can see, but of course, that's just me as one person. So creating a limit as a percentage of the lot size that could be covered by impervious surface, that could be something that could go into our land use code in Chapter 4 zoning regulations. Create a landscaping requirement of X% of the parcel to contain permeable surfaces. So that kind of be the opposite. And that could go into our land use code, Chapter 8, Section 8.3, landscaping requirements. And currently 8.3.1B accepts infill development from landscaping requirements in general. So I don't know, that may be a potential place to address this. Establish percentage limit in Chapter 4 of the land use code for lots under a certain size, possibly. So We would just like to know what you would like to support, and with direction from you, I can do more research
There's
to
a lot-
develop the options more fully.
There's a lot of information and a lot of choices. We don't expect you to say, oh, the one you just read through sounds like a great idea.
Right, right.
But I didn't want Ann to go through the exercise of really digging deep into this if this is not an area that you all have interest in pursuing. So really what we're asking for tonight is some direction on if this is in fact a topic that you would like us to do further investigation on. If that's the case, we will certainly do that. We can look at best practices, have conversations with DEQ, all of those sorts of things. The goal here for us really is to not impact our ability to bring on diverse types of housing, but to simultaneously protect stormwater issues as we do that. And as we continue to see the density start to get built in and these small lots and ADUs continue to move forward, we're seeing a lot of them. It's going to become a bigger issue. I think the consideration at the time was this might be a one-off kind of here or there type of thing, and that has turned out not to be the case. So we need to address it. So that's really what we're asking for tonight is this something you want us to dig deeper into and give you some possible options to consider?
I'm so grateful for the time that y'all and thoughtfulness that y'all have put into being proactive. And the word that stands out to me is intentionality. Because I think this is such a example of kind of when two really important things feel like they could be at odds, you know, having resilient ecology in our community, but also having housing needs met. And I don't think there's anyone in town that doesn't agree that we have some housing needs here. So I'm definitely in support of having some options that we can consider of how we might address that going into the future.
One of the things that contributes to this impervious surface is some of the things that we have already got on our books. And that is the requirements that you've got to have such a wide street going into, even if it's just one or two houses.
Yeah.
As opposed to going ahead and just putting it down as gravel.
Yeah.
Now, granted, gravel is not 100% pervious, I
Sure.
recognize that, but it is certainly a lot more pervious than asphalt. And that also goes ahead and cuts to the chase of affordability.
Absolutely.
When you start going ahead and requiring people to put in a 20-foot driveway paved, that's a lot of money.
I agree with you on the impervious part of that, and that certainly kind of falls in our wheelhouse. The requirements around the width of it is really more a conversation with public safety and the fire marshal for what his requirements are. So it's one of those things where from our work, we're saying we want more impervious surfaces so we can have, you know, avoid runoff issues. From a public safety standpoint, he's looking at can rescue vehicles travel
response time.
outside? And so there are a ton of things like that that are competing.
Yeah.
But to the extent that we can address the portions that fall under our purview, that's really what we're trying to do. And as we're looking at things, we're trying to kind of keep track of things like this. Because the last thing we want is to find out that we've now had 400 of these built and it's just all paved.
Yeah.
And the neighbors start showing up because now all of a sudden their 1940s cottage basement is covered in mold and soaking wet, and now they've got foundation problems.
Which I think we've all heard those stories anecdotally, but I'm sure there's trends there and,
Yeah,
and
there
things we can
absolutely
point to.
So I completely agree with what you're saying.
But I mean, but we still need to look at that. And try to
Absolutely.
get the fire chief in here and say, why would we need a 20-foot wide driveway?
We are certainly,
When you're looking at a fire truck that's only 8 feet wide.
we are certainly happy to have those conversations, and I'm not an expert on the, you know, fire marshal portion of things. But unless there's something from a state regulatory standpoint, if we have wiggle room, I think you're absolutely right. It's worth investigating. We just need to determine if we do.
I think it's a good idea to encourage this infill. Evidently, people are liking it a lot.
Yep.
And I appreciate that you're looking down the road so we don't have so many unintended consequences to things that sound like a good idea at the time.
Right.
And probably are, but there are unintended consequences. So I appreciate having some options to come to consider.
Yeah,
And-
consequences that are hard to undo.
And we're seeing a big uptick too in the need for multi-generational housing. And that's where a lot of these ADUs and small units are coming into consideration. And we want to do that, right? Like we have a population that's changing. And so all of the things that you all have held up as kind of critical points. We want to make sure we're moving forward in those areas. But to your point, Anne is constantly kind of looking at stormwater things to make sure that 5 years from now, we haven't created a perfect storm. That's exactly what we don't want to do. So
I appreciate what you've done. I would like to see you move forward, looking into more options for
Okay.
us and bring that back.
So she will do that and pull together some of the options, best practices, some examples from across the state that are working. And then we'll schedule a time in the next, month or so to come back and kind of share those with all of you. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. But I thought the map was really helpful for you all to take a look at what we've actually got.
Yeah.
Because you don't think about it all the time, like how big are the things we actually have? But if you look at that, you imagine so much of that becoming impervious, that's a problem.
Michelle, you're gonna take this to the planning board before you bring it back to us?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Becky.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
And our next topic is much the same. So one of the conversations that's happening across the country and across North Carolina is data centers. And while we are not necessarily high risk for a data center because of what I said before, we don't have a lot of real estate left, there is some risk to us. And I'll give you just a couple of examples. Walnut Cove in North Carolina is a classic example happening right now. There's a data center coming in. There's a lot of pushback from the community. There are all these kind of discussions going on about impacts of water and energy and all of those things. And so for a couple of months now, Russell's been taking a look at, again, what do we need to do before somebody comes to us with a data center proposal and you're standing there in the middle of it trying to make a decision. So with that, I'll hand that one over to Russell.
Just to clarify, there is no data center.
There is
proposal.
no data center being proposed. There is no data center, to our knowledge, being considered. We are doing this so that we have a plan before there ever is one. Yeah, zero data centers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Russell Kate, the planner and zoning administrator. Good evening. So the one, I'll just start off with a very specific from last week. On March 23rd at their meeting, the planning board voted to recommend text amendment language that if this related to data centers, and I'll just mention like the key categories for what is in the language. You can expect this item to be coming to you through the normal protocol for your April agenda to be a call for a public hearing, and then your May agenda for to be actual public hearing on the text amendment with the recommendation from the planning board. So
And this is really to inform you so you have all the information as you make that decision.
So I'll just kind of do the highlight of what the planning board has recommended, but I'm not here to speak for them. The main thing is I can give a quick rundown of, it might be useful to have like a current quick update on our peers in the area, including in Buncombe County, some of the activities, legislative and court. I can kind of quickly go over that or summarize. But and what the planning board, there's three. One thing is to, as part of the amending of the ordinance, to have a definition, to add a definition in the definition section of the land use code. Data processing facility, that's the name of the use, or the name of the use, and to allow the use per a list of conditions, so a list of requirements, not conditions, per a list of requirements to allow it in one zoning district, the heavy industrial zoning district. And then the requirements are, as most jurisdictions in the state have been doing, the purpose of these requirements are to regulate data processing facilities and data center buildings, including for the use cryptocurrency mining. And height limit 35 feet. Heavy industrial otherwise allows a significantly higher height limit. A significant use separation. One of those provisions is the facility can be no closer than 1/4 mile from any place of worship, school, or residence. Somebody submitting to establish this use, among the required submitted documents would be a study prepared by an acoustical engineer. Security fencing, at least 8 feet in height, a vegetative buffer at least 25 feet deep around the entire perimeter of the facility. Almost no signage allowed. Noise, the amount of noise generated by the data processing facility will not exceed 55 decibels, but only 50 decibels at night. So 55 during non-night and then 50 at night. And then, like most jurisdictions, absolutely an abandonment provision. It's the use is permitted only contingent on acknowledgement that all obsolete or unused systems must be removed, and including the fact that the town deems the facility to be abandoned if it's been non-operational for 180 days. That's pretty standard, I think, across the country, and certainly in North Carolina, because of it's such a significant amount of e-waste, electronic waste, and everything, like the decommissioning of this building, the everything, the whole site. So again, I don't want to speak in detail about something that you should expect coming to you very soon from the planning board.
And I think it's important to make clear too, that neither the planning board nor you all nor us have the ability to completely eliminate a business type in this way.
Yes, and in fact, the planning board
have these restrictions that are being recommended.
And in fact, I didn't even think to mention the planning board was working on, actually, was working on the first kind of take at this language. And they left staff with some specific directives to come back. The last significant time they did that was at their August 2024 meeting. That was right before Helene. And one of the things they had staff do was an analysis, a geographic analysis. And again, I'm not going to, but what I just listed about that 1/4 mile from place of worship, only in the heavy industrial zoning district, can't be any closer to a dwelling unit. And we have 3 dwelling units in the heavy industrial zoning district. There is one parcel in our town limits, or at least one, that could theoretically have. So you understand, it's the whole thing per state statute. We can't just
Say you can't do it at all.
can't unless we have a very significant
But I think it is important
justification for.
that the public and you all understand that there may be more than one, but we've been able to identify one parcel that may be an applicable parcel for a potential data center. And because that one exists, we need to have a plan should
Yeah.
something present itself.
So Buncombe County, this is very quick. I mean, I have some detail. I can answer questions if you have it, but again, I don't want to give you detail about other jurisdictions at this point, I don't think, but Buncombe County has adopted, has amended their ordinance. Interestingly, they have banned cryptocurrency mining. What they have established as a permitted use is data center. They just call it data center. They've defined it. It's allowed subject to a specific list of requirements, very similar to what I just read. One thing I'll note is, and it's allowed in a specific industrial district subject to this list of requirements. But in the definition, they actually, Buncombe County now has a definition for cryptocurrency mining operation. That's the use. They have a use called cryptocurrency mining operation. So two sentences in the definition. The second sentence, the only one I'm going to read to you is the second sentence. Cryptocurrency mining operations are not permitted in Buncombe County. So that's Buncombe County's approach. Obviously, that covers the unincorporated parts of the county. Michelle mentioned Walnut Cove. Walnut Cove is in Stokes County. Stokes County.
Rest along the Dan River, much like we rest along the Swananoa River.
And the county commissioners there voted against their planning board's recommendation and did a significant rezoning to approve the use and a significant rezoning over 1,000 acres for and other land also got affected by this, but specifically for Project Delta, on a parcel that's over 1,000 acres. Well, 2 weeks ago, on March 12th, Stokes County, I'm sorry, the Southern Coalition for Social Justice and the Southern Environmental Law Center filed a lawsuit in Stokes County Superior Court, largely based on process violations. They feel it absolutely was an action that was completely out of their required due diligence for like their comp plan and whatnot, but they also are claiming improper noticing and improper public process.
One of the issues that happened is because Stoke County made this decision, the most impacted community is the community of Walnut Cove. And the people of Walnut Cove didn't really have the ability to speak to this or to address this. And so they're going to live with the downstream effects of this decision that was made at the county level. And so when you start to look at where our borders end and the county borders begin, that's where the rub is, right? That's where it gets a little dicey.
Shortly before Helene, the planning board did hear from the town attorney about a moratorium, as you all probably know, is a big deal under state statute. You have to be you all, if you impose a moratorium, you have to have very strong on the record justification for why you impose a moratorium. But we do have an example now in our area, Canton, in Haywood County imposed unanimously, their council unanimously approved a 12-month moratorium on December 11th on data center development, server farms, and cryptocurrency mining. And in that case, they passed that 12-month moratorium because there was inquiries, plural, from out of non-local corporations interested in the possibility of having such an operation at the mill site. And I believe believe me, I don't work for Canton or Haywood County, but I believe part of why a very basic justification for them imposing the moratorium is that site is already subject to intensive economic development and planning efforts by the town of Canton. And I think that's one way the state statute allows you to say, we need 12 months, we need a pause period.
And they are also in the process, you can also do that if you're in an active process of updating your UDO. So that is one of the bumpers that would allow you to establish a moratorium. And I think that some of that is in play in Canton as well as they're revising the land use code.
That's this is a work session, and so I think we all always want to give you the chance to ask questions or just say, hey,
But long story short, again, just like the first issue with AMS, we have one site that we know of, but we border Buncombe County in a lot of areas. And you have to think about things like annexation and you have to think about the impacts of that. And so we wanted to bring it to your attention, kind of some of the ways it's been dealt with, both, really locally and at a regional level in Stokes County, and get some direction from you all if this is an avenue that you would like for us to pursue as we work towards finalizing the UDO or working through the UDO, or as a text amendment to put something in place to address these types of emerging industries.
And again, the planning board's recommendation, I assume, will be coming to you imminently on your agenda. I forgot one last thing. In the profession nationally throughout the United States, all of the United States of America, I know this isn't surprising, but the American Planning Association is a very large organization. How do I put it? And, they dedicated their entire October 2025 issue of Zoning Practice, which is one of their main publications. And it's interesting, they kind of focus it, the title is largely, I think, wrapped around the land use side, not so much like the geopolitical or, because the title is The Physical Footprint of Artificial Intelligence.
The reality is you can look at all the ecological issues and all of those things, but what is going to ultimately determine whether you have a data center or not is going to be your land use code. So we are the front door for those types of decisions. And that's why this is something that seemed timely to bring to you. We know there's been interest expressed in many communities. There are people making these considerations. And again, I just don't want us to be caught flat-footed if something happens. If I understood you correctly,
Mhm.
maybe I didn't. You said Buncombe County currently prohibits cryptocurrency mining.
That was part
Flat
of,
out statement, yeah. But just because maybe I don't know, but maybe the public doesn't know. Is there a difference between that and a data center?
that is at the last planning board meeting, the Black Mountain Planning Board meeting, that is one of the main issues that was discussed, because what you'll see is the planning board, the definition that was approved puts cryptocurrency under the heading of that is a type of data center.
But there are other.
And that reflects a lot of the literature and a lot of what's going on around the country, but it is very not uncommon now for like Buncombe County to consider cryptocurrency mining to be a unique enough, distinct enough beast.
So there's two ways to look at it. You either become so specific that you call these things out one by one, or you make a broad enough umbrella that you cover anything that falls under that. I would strongly suggest right now for us that we make a broad enough umbrella. Because this is gonna continue to emerge. There are gonna be new things popping up. And in my opinion, we will text amend ourselves to death trying to keep up with all the names and the changes and the slight tweaks. So. But these terms are not interchangeable. They are different things. They are slightly different things, yeah.
There are data centers that are not crypto
Yeah.
mining centers.
Absolutely correct.
I think one thing you're seeing though, is that the actual values of these projects are significant. And when you're looking at somewhere that's,
Which is
you know,
exactly
heavy
what happened.
budget issues, and all of a sudden you got a, yeah, hey,
Yeah.
$500 or $600 million project that it wants to come to your county or your town, you're thinking, your eyes are starting to get big on the dollar
And I think that's.
signs, but they're not recognizing all of the other
Yeah,
issues.
I think that's exactly what happened in Stokes County. You know, you're talking about a place that was really looking for economic drivers. On its face, this is a huge economic driver. If you consider that by itself, sure, that sounds great. Let's bring it in. But there's more than that. And it ultimately falls to you all to decide, which side of that we as a community are going to fall on and where we want to prioritize our interests. And so that is where we are. You will get a recommendation from the planning board, but whether you entertain that recommendation and move forward with that text amendment or not, we wanted to make sure you had the information. Should you choose to move forward with that recommendation, obviously that sets a path for us to get this language formed and included. If you don't, obviously we'll be looking to you for some direction on how you want to handle these issues moving forward. Another question. I recently heard of a situation in Tennessee, actually, and it was so loud that the neighbors were about to lose their minds day in and day out, this noise. I guess it just got shut down recently, but can you give me something comparable to 55 decibels? What does that
Actually,
sound?
our planning board, you should be proud of your planning board. I mean, at this last meeting, there was
Good.
some, I think even in the meeting, there was a few checking of a few legitimate like government sites about because the first draft of the language had 55 decibel limit, no matter what. The decision to go to, and I don't have the hours written down, at night and is only 50 decibels. The example for 50 is I was shocked when the examples were given. I was in my head, I was like, you all are going to move forward with that. It's so strict, but it's like, yes, a use can be defined by the local jurisdiction. It's I can't even remember. I mean, it was I wish I could remember. It was like a house fan or something, like heard at a distance of 10 feet or something. It was what we learned was that it's like the Richter scale. When you go from 55 to 54, it's notable, but when you go from 55 to 50, it's a dramatic drop. So the board really talked about it and they're like, that is reasonable. We have the right at night, like our noise ordinance.
Yeah.
And it's like all this proper, like North Carolina statute justification, like it marries with our noise ordinance, which is at night, you cannot make any loud or disturbing noises at all.
They did their due diligence to understand where those thresholds are that significantly changed the sound levels.
And I didn't even mention the noise thing. The noise measurement is taken at the like closest point to, on the edge of the facility. And I know that's normal with most of these ordinances around the country, but I just wanted to make sure you know that. It's not like the operator gets to pick the quietest, lowest corner of their parcel. The government body gets to pick.
The other item that will obviously be an item of concern as you consider economic projects like this is water. And that will obviously be a conversation no matter what. There's a question of whether we could even accommodate something like that. So while that's not included in this, because it's not necessarily something that we or the planning board can direct related to, that would be another consideration should something like this, come into play.
I would say, 50 decibels is an electric fan on low setting.
Thank
A
you.
refrigerator is normally at about 50
Wow.
decibels.
What was going on? Wow.
No, noise, I think I'm saying the obvious. Noise has been a absolute number one. And I think in a number of states, noise related to economic activity in a lot of states, you can't really touch it. I think that's part of what we're learning from so many other states.
So we're not asking for any specific action in that. You'll get this item from the planning board, and based on your decision from there, we'll either move forward with that, or you could decide you want to move forward in a different direction. But the biggest issue was we wanted to make sure you were well informed before this came on the agenda.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. One thing I want to go ahead and just say to not only you, to everyone here on the board and all. One of the reasons for these data centers is because all of us, and I include, when I say we, I'm included in that nominative plural, have become so addicted to this thing right here. And the fact that you got that we want to have 1,000 pictures at our fingertips, 24/7.
Mayor Sobel, you can come hang out in the planning department. We have these conversations
Oh,
all the
that's
time.
been big for sure. We've got to be thinking about this, folks. I mean, I'm just telling you this and then AI, but that's a whole different ballpark. Somebody was saying, well, so you're just a Luddite. And for those of you that don't know about Luddites were a group of people up in Scotland in the late 1800s. That went ahead and were frustrated because the English were building these mills with looms in them, and it was destroying their cottage industries. So the Luddites struck out and started burning these factories down. I'm just suggesting.
Uh-oh, arson. Arson.
You said
You
it.
should run the flame. Did you? So the other piece, and Russell, welcome to stay for this.
Okay.
So the other conversation that we need some direction from you all on is related to the UDO. And I'll be really kind of transparent about this. When I started, I think maybe I made it 2 steps in the door when it was job number 1 is finish the UDO in the first year. And so we started that process, and Russell's done a tremendous body of work. Ann's done a tremendous body of work. Jennifer's done a tremendous body of work. Our whole team has, above and beyond our regular day-to-day, invested a tremendous amount of time and energy into working through the UDO. We also have been working with Craig Justice for the fine tuning of that and the drafting of it. More importantly, I think, because it's a volunteer body, at the beginning of the fiscal year, Wesley, is that right? Our planning board, basically everybody was to roll off but one person. And we basically had to beg the planning board to stay with us for another year to get through this, because starting with a new planning board would have been
Starting over.
a little tough. And they did, and they've put a tremendous amount of energy and effort and consideration into this as well. So where we are now, the best timeline that I can give you all that we're working from as of today is we believe, and I will say that I wanted to have a conversation with Craig before I had this conversation with you all. He is traveling and won't be back in town until after the 6th, but I'm fairly certain he will agree that this is accurate, but that it may be tweaked just slightly. Is our goal would be to have it on the planning board's agenda and at the end of April, to then have it, in their May meeting, to then have it to you all to call for a public meeting in June, have the public meeting and a vote on the UDO in July. In between May and July, we would have a series of community meetings where we could bring out the draft, talk through the changes, kind of show the track changes. it's really all the changes that had been discussed when the community listening sessions were going on, as other groups have come to you all, as you all have given us directives on things, on everything from the tree ordinance to data centers to stormwater. But we had been asked to pause, and so I need clarity for our work planning purposes on whether we should move forward with that and move in that timeline, or whether we should pause. And I will say that one of the things you may have seen and will probably continue to see, without the UDO in effect, we're text amending ourselves to death. So we're having to bring all these text amendments and piecemeal this thing. And that is not effective and efficient from a staffing standpoint. It's frustrating to our planning board, who feels like they've hung in with us to try to get something accomplished. And we are confident as a staff, we met about it on Monday, to talk through those deadlines and those timeframes, and we're confident that is a reasonable timeframe. And I'll get final confirmation from Craig, but I don't foresee any issues with that. So I need direction from you all as to, do we finish this thing?
My
Or do we not?
recommendation would be to go ahead and finish this thing.
Yeah, let's get it done.
Let's get it done.
Great.
The amount of time and energy, truly, I don't even know how to speak to it, but, yeah.
It's how Russell and I got gray hair.
Yeah.
I think the concern was
Those are highlights.
on some people's, some people were concerned that it was just overwhelming. We had so much going on and it was out of concern for your work.
Sure.
But I'm glad you brought it up so we could be more aware of what is your workload and how do you all feel about it. So I'm glad you brought it up, and I'd be in favor of pushing through and getting it done.
I think the reality is there's so many things that have to be addressed that we're having to do the individual text amendments anyway.
It's making more work.
And by the time you do
Yep.
that, and we've
That's right.
put that together and gone here and gone there and brought it to you all, we could have moved the ball down the field. So, if you all are comfortable with that, that is our target date. I will confirm with Craig when he's back next week and get some final dates to you all. I would invite you all, as we have community meetings around this, to be there and be present in those conversations. I think it's a good opportunity to reinforce to the community that the things that they walked in this room and brought to you all, you're codifying and you're solidifying. And I think that means a lot. We've had a lot of people ask us about the tree ordinance.
Sure.
We've had a lot of people ask us about streets and everything. I mean, everything that's in it. And it's a constant question. So I think it's our professional opinion that it is in our best interest to finish it.
Well, I appreciate the transparency of having these sessions when people can come in and just have a conversation about, what does this new ordinance proposed to look like? And to just make so clear the attention that your department has given every meeting we have when things come up that are going to impact the UDO, that's getting baked in all along the way, the whole time.
Yeah, we've tried to track that. Jennifer does a really good job of kind of data mining from council meetings to make sure, data mining, I should have said that. To make sure if something got brought up or any of you brought something up, that we added it to the punch list. So we're happy with where it's going. And just because I think it's important for you to know, we've had 2 different full day sessions in this room with Craig where we're going through making final edits and doing pieces like that. And then in between that, each member of our staff is working on separate pieces of it that will get incorporated into the next meeting. And so that's how that has gone. Some of it is, there's no wiggle room on, there are legislative changes that just have to be updated.
Sure.
A lot of it is really from the guidance of council and community feedback that we've gotten in from Elevate Blackmail. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been working really hard on strike. And get
Trying, yeah.
stated on the golf course.
This was an impressive proposal.
Ah,
Thank
yeah.
you for putting
No
the time and
problem.
energy
We
in.
want to try to give you all the options and, my name is Brent. I'm the operations manager at the, Black Mountain Golf Course. I'm here tonight just to run through some options for you for moving forward with the golf course. What I think is the best option that makes the golf course most sustainable for the long term. And then a 10-year plan looking at that. So if you'll check out the Excel sheet, you should have one in front of you. basically the 5 options. You got it 9 holes as is. That's what we're doing right now. If you come down and look at the profit net loss in this case, 9 holes as is does not work as far as from an accounting standpoint. It just doesn't work. 9 holes as is with the range is your next option. We get a little closer to break even here. I actually talked with a fellow named Dave Scapeter. He's owned driving ranges in this area for a long time. The $150,000 revenue that I put in there for the driving range could fluctuate a little bit, but that was a number that he thought that we could easily attain. So that's why I went with that number. So you could see a break even there. You could see losing $20,000. It's hard to say until we do it. And if we ran through a year with that, you know, we'd have a better idea. 9 holes restored with a driving range. That means that we're going to have to throw some capital on the golf course and really make the back 9 better than it is right now, because you would have to be able to charge more to make 9 holes actually work. And unfortunately, right now we're charging as much as we can possibly charge as a 9-hole course. You know, it just is what it is. People come to town, they want to play 18 holes.
And that fee is for 9.
It's $35 on the weekend, 30 during the week. And then 18 holes as is, that's basically, let's go back to the day before the storm. That's how we were operating. We were turning a ton of rounds. We were generating revenue, quite a bit of revenue. We saw some of our best years. We did 1.1 million our last full fiscal year. I don't see that changing. I think with the amount of competition that's out there now, which is waning, we're probably going to see a ton of rounds of golf. We're going to be getting back the play that we've lost with tournaments. And so really getting 18 holes open, I think is critical to moving forward. The last option is the 18-hole restored option. That means that you would dump a bunch of capital that has honestly not been spent over the last 30 plus years in probably via a loan that you'd be paying back each year, maybe over a 15-year period. In this instance, that's what we're looking at. You do see a larger profit margin there, but again, you have to spend money up front. And with everything that I'm seeing, you know, the costs around town, that's probably not highly likely. So what I would actually suggest is a combination of the last 2 options, which is the 18 holes as is and the 18 holes restored. If you'll switch over to where I get into the 18-hole recovery and 10-year plan with course updates and improvements. Basically what I'm coming here saying tonight is really to make the golf course be viable long-term, we have to be back to 18 holes. I think if we stay as nine holes, most likely this golf course lasts 10 years. That's kind of what you see around the country. 9-hole courses just don't tend to make it. And it's because you can't cut costs in half, but you're basically cutting your rounds of golf in half. So you're going to lose money the majority of the time. So what we would have to have is first the bridges on 3 and 5. Most likely those are going to, you know, last meeting we talked about a bid that was going to come in around $90,000. I don't know that we got that in this bid process. The bid process closed at 5 o'clock this evening. So I'd say we'll find that out next meeting. But what we would have to get going within this fiscal year would be those bridges fixed, and then a budget amendment, which would cover staffing to operate as an 18-hole course. We budgeted as a 9-hole for this fiscal year. So we're going to run out of contract labor well before we get to the end of the year if we start trying to bring in enough stuff to keep everything mowed out to playable condition. So that number right now, just based on the potential $90,000 expense, could range anywhere from 135 to 165. That is covering the bridges and the staffing. That also is covering some fuel overages that I'm guessing are going to occur, $4 plus a gallon. It's affecting us at the course. One good thing of note, so this afternoon I had a call with Alan Tripp from the Friends of Black Mountain Golf Course and a lady named Kimberly. She is from the TDA Lift Fund. So this is the Buncombe County Tourism Group. They've got $11.9 million that
they're going to be spending on basically recreation type activities in this area to draw in more tourism to Buncombe County. And fortunately, we fall right in line with what they're looking for. And the way this works is it is a 1-to-1 match. So money that we spend, they will match it exact, 100%. And they will most likely count our $1 million that we have right now cash in hand for our maintenance building. So if we were selected, the application process starts this month, and we've got the entire month to get our application in. Then if we make it to round 2, which we most likely would based on the call I had today, then we get narrowed down and have a good chance of being selected and receiving the match. So it's something to think about, because as 9 holes, they don't really have interest in funding us because they don't see it as a tourism driver for the area. They see it more as a community golf course at that point, and the TDA is about tourism. So they want to drive as much tourism traffic to Buncombe County, have people renting hotel rooms. And it's just one of those deals where if we don't do the 18 holes, we're not going to see that funding. So just keep that in mind, as we go forward here. Let's see. So 5-year financial outlook, I think that making revenue is not a problem now. I do think that costs are going to continue to climb. And that means that, we have to be better about increasing our rate over time.
I was going to ask, I didn't see anything specific pitched in the proposal.
Yeah, I'll show you. Well, get a little bit further.
Sorry.
So a funny thing here. So in 2001, our weekend rate was $45. Right now, our senior rate is $45, and it's 2026. There's nothing else in your life that the price has stayed the same for the last 25 years. And it's really not realistic to think that we could have continued to do these capital projects on the golf course without continuing to raise rates. When I have people come play golf from all over the country, all over the world, to be honest with you, they're shocked at how cheap golf is in Western North Carolina. And it shows, there are certainly projects that we need to do at the golf course. I'm not lying to that, but we have to be able to pay for those. And I don't know that there's a huge appetite out there from taxpayers who don't golf to pay for these things. So it really is going to fall. It's going to be a burden on the golfer to pay for these things. But my plan would be over the next 10 years, all operating profits would be retained and reinvested into the course. So instead of falling into the general fund and going towards something else, we would pump that money each year back into a project. I think $150,000 as a profit is honestly on the low end. Our last full year, we did a little over $200,000 in profit. And I only saw things speeding up. And now we have less competition. We're going to be extremely busy as 18 holes. We're pretty busy as 9 holes now, but we'll be very busy as 18 holes. So kind of in summary, what we'd have to do here to make this happen is do the one-time investment, which is the bridges and the staffing, if we're going to be open within this fiscal year. We can budget for that for the upcoming fiscal year, that's what I'm planning on doing. Obviously, we can adjust that, but I'm kind of stuck right now because I have to make a decision. Are we budgeting it as 9 holes or as 18? And I think we should budget as 18 holes. It makes the most sense to me. So where do we go from here? A little bit of course background. The course is built, Front Nine was opened in 1929. We're coming up on 100 years. That is something we should be proud of. Keeping a golf course in the community for 100 years is a little bit unheard of with municipal golf courses these days. So we really wouldn't want to lose that asset, I don't think. It's great for tourism, no doubt. It's great for the downtown businesses here. People come play golf, they go shop in the stores, they eat at our restaurants, they stay at Airbnbs. So I don't think as a tourist town, which we seem to be, We don't really want to lose something that brings people to town. And then also it's great for folks here in the community. It's a fun golf course. It's good for the kids at Owen High School, at ACA, high school, middle school. They come out, use it. I've seen coaches, they've been calling me from all kinds of different schools this year, looking for a place to play because there are so many golf courses in these areas that have either closed, that were damaged. We've got to have a place for them to go. So, you know, we're trying to bear the load for that. It's difficult with 9 holes because I'm also trying to balance generating enough revenue to make things work. But with 18 holes, that does become a lot easier. So
how does that work? If a school wants to play, do we charge them or do they?
So at this time, we do not. So public schools, we let them have matches. We let them do practice like late in the evenings. But I mean, we limit that. We don't, you know, it's not every day, but we try to put them in slow times. But the schools, they don't really have budget, especially in sports like golf. They have no budget.
Yeah.
So if we start charging them, it's just going to completely destroy their programs.
Yeah. Okay.
We do, when they have matches, we do charge for golf carts. So if they go out on a golf cart, parents come watch, we charge for the golf carts. But as far as the golf goes, we let them have it. Alice, you're talking about the revenues or the price. So in projected golf course revenue, I'm showing an APR of $60. That is up about $10 APR of what we're at now. So APR is average per round. And you're seeing I'm showing a conservative amount of rounds at 22,000. That is 22,000 averaged 18-hole rounds, because that's kind of how you have to arrive at a number of what you think that you can make. So we might do 29,000 rounds, but some of those may be walking rounds. Some of those may be member rounds where they're not paying a greens fee. About 22,000 rounds would be a very conservative number for us to make at a $60 average per round.
Do you know how many we did in 2024?
So in our last full year, we actually did 31,500 rounds, but that counts the 9 holes, that counts walkers. So you have to bring that number down as far as your overall APR. So you can get the math to work out, because a $0 round is gonna drop that down. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you can see there, I gave a moderate and optimistic outlook. I think the moderate and optimistic outlook are further down the road if we do invest some money back into the golf course. I think we could fall probably somewhere between conservative and moderate, but I based most of this off the conservative number because I felt like that was the most realistic thing. You know, we don't want to stick our neck out too far here and be unrealistic. So let's see.
So sorry, can I ask a question about this? So this would still include kind of having some membership options, local discount.
It would. So to be honest with you, it's hard for me to project what the rate should be if we're still 9 holes right now. I want to come to you here maybe in the May meeting if it looks like we're going to be 18 holes and give you a full breakdown of what I think these rates should be. But I do think that there should be a Black Mountain rate, a Black Mountain resident rate. You're paying taxes here. You've been carrying some burden for the golf course for a while, so there should be a discount for that. But we need to limit when those times are. You know, it can't be Saturday morning at 9 a.m. That doesn't work because that's a high demand time. And if we want to reach a $60 APR, we can't discount primetime tee times. You know, it just doesn't work. And we did that for a long time. It worked for a long time, but the demographic has changed completely. So the last few years, we've really shifted kind of how we operate, and it has driven more revenue. So we want to continue that.
Sorry to interrupt. Since we're talking about rates, I know that I know we have a senior rate now. I don't believe we have a junior rate.
So the way the junior rate works, this council, I don't know if this council passed it, but 12 and under playing with adult actually plays for free, completely for free. And then if kids that are 13 to 17, we have the Youth on Course program. So with the Youth on Course program, it's a nationwide program. As long as they've got their Youth on Course card, they can walk anytime after 2 o'clock for $5. It's a nationally recognized program. It's great to bring kids out. They don't take golf carts, it's just to introduce them to the game at a rate that they can sustain. But we also limit the days, it's Monday through Thursday. We do a weekend occasionally if it's slow times, but I don't have a specific rate if they want to ride. We just charge what the rate is after that 12-year-old round.
Okay. Yeah, well, I mean, I was looking at some statistics this morning and noticed that the most growth over the last year in the golf industry has come from that. I think it was 15 to 25 age range.
Yeah.
It's maybe 17 to 27, but and I think if we're going to talk about how to make the course more profitable, we should be attracting the people who where the sport is trending right now.
Sure.
And doing what we can to attract those people.
No doubt. And I agree with you. I will say this, one of the biggest things we've missed since the storm, we've had to go down to 9 holes is, I used to do a ton of bachelor parties and they are difficult to deal with while they're going on, but it brings in a ton of revenue because they spend a lot of money in the pro shop. They spend a lot of money down with Karen at the 19th hole grill. We haven't seen that since the storm because folks come to town, they're going to choose the golf course that has 18 holes instead of 9. If you're going somewhere and you're a golfer, Archie, you're going to probably go play the 18-hole golf
I
course.
stopped playing 9-hole courses 20 years ago.
So it's I agree with you. That's the young demographic that we're seeing because usually these groups are in that 17 to 27 age range. They're very enthusiastic about golf, no doubt. It is a different crowd than the old school golfer. Like I said, it's difficult to control when they're out there, but we have to have them if we're going to make it. So I agree with you. Economic impact on the community. These numbers come from the TDA. So what they're saying is the golf course is the 18-hole course. They think brings in about 1.1 million, maybe a little bit more into retail, into hotels, into food and beverage in the area. So those folks come in and they spend their dollars away from the golf course, obviously down at the Pure and Proper eating dinner, or so anywhere in Buncombe County is what they're looking at. But most of the folks that are playing Black Mountain are spending money in Black Mountain at the downtown shops and restaurants, probably staying in Airbnbs or our new hotel. So I think that's an important number. I think we want to keep bringing people into those places and not harm that number. The 9 holes, I think, probably is harming that number at this point. But I think it will come back no problem as soon as we're back fully functioning. Hurricane damage assessment, I just put this in here so that anyone who doesn't know what happened can have a good idea. I don't know that I necessarily need to go through all this, but the biggest things we lost were infrastructure, our maintenance building, the equipment, bridges, the irrigation pump, and losing equipment, losing the irrigation pump, losing the ability to spray for 7 months was very detrimental to the greens, all the playing surfaces. But fortunately, in my opinion, Jerry did a great job getting the green surfaces back. They look fantastic. They're very healthy. I think they'll continue to improve. I think the front 9, it might have even helped having a little bit of rest on those greens. They're 100 years old. So reducing foot traffic, all that heat stress. They really look better than ever, but we do still have a couple problem greens. And that's what I want to get into in this next section. Estimated renovation, repair, and cost. You see I'm listing some course cleanup, debris removal. That is really referring to the large stumps that we still have on the golf course. We lost 42 trees during the storm. We, as staff, were able to remove the wood, but those stumps are huge. So we're going to have to pay to have somebody come in and collect those and haul them off. Tree removal and safety clearing, we're talking about. I've got a dead sycamore on the back nine that needs to come down. It becomes a hazard when you have dead trees leaning up in other trees, but it's expensive. Tree work is expensive. If you own a home, you know, it costs a lot to have somebody come in and do that. So I think that's money that we're gonna have to spend regardless, whichever direction you choose to go. Greens and tees. I've got 5 greens right now that, really I've got 18 greens that need to be replaced, but 5 greens that for sure need to be replaced. Those are about $100,000 a pop. So I don't think it's realistic to say we're going to do those all at once. It's just not. But I think that's something we can do over the next 10 years for sure. Tee boxes. Most of the tee boxes need to be rebuilt. They need to be expanded. They're built for old style golf where you had half to a quarter of the amount of rounds that we're seeing now. When you have 200 people go across the tee box in a day, you can imagine it takes a beating. You can move the tees all you want, but when tees are small, there's only so much space that you can move them. So at some point we need to expand these tees and make them more durable. Maybe even change the type of turf, go to Zoysia or something like that, that can take the heat and take that amount of traffic. Cart path repairs, fairway reset. So basically what that means is you come in, you spray out the fairways. When I say spray them out, we've got a Heinz 57 of different types of grass out there. You want to bring them back to turf type tescue and bluegrass mix where you're actually able to treat that and use good cultural practices and keep it healthy. That's difficult to do when you're treating 10 different types of grass. It's basically impossible. Cart path repair. Our cart paths are abysmal, to be honest with you, especially after the storm. We've got a ton of tree root incursion, so it grows up under the cart paths, buckles them up, causes potholes. So when people are out there with golf carts, you can imagine it beats the carts to death. It beats the mowing decks on the mowers to death because they drive across those and it's, bouncing. And it's more about protecting our equipment, our golf carts, and then also increasing the player experience because they're out there getting beat to death as well. This is not a issue that Black Mountain stands alone in. If you play much golf in the area, golf cart paths tend to be one of the things that gets neglected because it's expensive to restore. So I don't think it's a thing that we do all at once, but I do think it's a thing that we should focus on doing over about a 4-year period. Drainage improvements, that's 4 fairway, 5 fairway. Those holes are kind of where the outflow of all the streams end right before it gets to Lake Tomahawk. Those holes stay wet. They're not graded properly. If they were graded properly, I think that we could dry those out, or at the very least install some drainage to help get rid of some wet areas.
So the number here reflects drainage improvements or grading?
I think we could do both, especially on that higher end. Drainage itself, when you're talking about cutting in French drains, is not a huge undertaking. I know that there are some stormwater issues with that we have to work around and deal with. So I can't really speak to that, but I think it's doable with that. Bridge repairs. So I just kind of gave a wide swath of pricing there because I'm still not really sure what that's going to look like. But it will have to happen if we're going to be 18 holes. Irrigation repairs. So what we're talking about there are booster pumps on the front and back nine. We've got a lot of aging heads on the golf course. We do try to replace some each year, but they're $500 a pop. We've got over 300 heads on that golf course. So you can imagine that gets expensive. So you have to do it a little bit at a time. You try to hit the trouble ones. You try to hit the ones that if we've got one that's not functioning around a green, we'll focus on it first because you're trying to keep your greens alive. And then maintenance equipment replacement, what I'm talking about there is not mowers. It's more like reel grinders, soil relievers, top dressers. It's things that we've had in the past, but we no longer have. It's basic infrastructure tools that a golf course has and uses often. So as we go, we're going to have to try to replace some of those things if we want to truly be able to operate. So what are we doing here? We're talking about modern drainage systems, 5 greens rebuilt, tee boxes rebuilt, durable cart paths, bunker redesign, native grass areas. I'll get into that here in a minute. Updated irrigation efficiency and appropriate staffing. So additional revenue opportunities. It's kind of the same as always. We're talking about corporate events and local tournaments, retention programs like our Players Pass. I'm showing some example of operating expenses here as a fully operational 18-hole course that we've done some improvements on. And then projected net operating results under that conservative scenario. I think on the low end, we make $120,000 a year. What I really think happens is we're somewhere between conservative and moderate. I think we could consistently see between $150,000 and $200,000 in profit a year. And again, that's kind of what I'm talking about here with, we'll go ahead and jump to the 10-year course improvement timeline.
Let me just interject one thing. When you have staff wages at $540, how many employees are you talking about?
So we're talking about 4 full-time. So right now we have 3 full-time. In 2010, I had 7 full-time. There was 2 on operations. There was 5 full-time in maintenance. In 2014, that number dropped to 4. In 2024, that number dropped to 3. So there's been 1 on the operations side of things since 2011. We had 5 on maintenance from 2011 to 2014, and then that dropped to 4, and now, dropped to 3, and now down to 2. So what I'm talking about is adding 1 full-time position back. And that number, it does include benefits because that's going to be part of it. It's about 45% per employee now is kind of what that number looks like. I have increased what contract labor cost would be there because we're talking about 5 contract laborers. And we're talking about, in this example, paying $25 an hour to contract labor instead of $15, because at $15 an hour, what we're getting, we're having to use First Incorporated. Our equipment is getting beat to death. There is no golf course knowledge. So when it comes to doing a project like an irrigation line blowout, it's zero help. You got to have somebody who has some knowledge, and you're going to have to pay people to get folks with the knowledge. So that's how I got to that number. That's including operational staff. So that's including folks in the pro shop. That's including cart starters.
You covered that.
Okay. So year 1, what I could see, this would be fiscal year 26, 27, hopefully, would be drainage and infrastructure foundation. So we're talking about, again, installing drainage to try to alleviate some of these wet areas that we're having, bogs out on the golf course. Mowers drive through them, and it just creates a worse problem. Irrigation system efficiency upgrades. So that's the booster pumps. That's changing some of these heads that we need to change. Might look at some bunker redesign where we have bunkers that wash out. There's all kinds of options for that. Begin looking at what greens need to be replaced first. You know, what order we're going to go in, when we're going to do that, who's going to do that, and then cart path spot fixes. So we're going to try to fix the worst of the worst spots. We've got spots that were repaired during the storm. They were gravel put down, but they haven't been paved. Eventually that's going to break down. And again, it's just going to cause potholes and all kinds of problems with equipment. And then possibly purchasing some of the necessary equipment. A reel grinder would be one of the very first things that we would probably look at. So what does that do? You get healthier turf conditions, reduced washouts in wet areas, and lower long-term maintenance costs. Year two, I look at building the first green, and the green that I think that we need to do first would be 9 green. That's the green that we have the most problems with. So I would say rebuild that green, work on some tee box reconstruction. Probably can't do all of them on the front 9, but maybe do the worst ones. 8 tee box is terrible. So that would be one that we would want to focus on and fix. Continue irrigation efficiency. Put some isolation valves in so that when we have a blowout, which happens a lot with the older system, we don't have to shut the whole system down. We can isolate the heads and fix one section, and we don't lose irrigation for 2 or 3 days in the middle of summer, which does happen. And then begin converting some of the areas that are out of play to what I call native grass areas. So between 1 and 9, you're talking about bringing in some like indigenous vegetation. You're talking about bringing in grasses. You're talking about areas that are completely out of play. You don't have to water them anymore. You don't have to mow them anymore. You rope them off. You see them at golf courses often. The Audubon Society really pushes this because it's great for the animals. It gives them a habitat to live in. And as you start to think your way around the golf course, there's multiple places where you can put that in. You're reducing your water usage, which means you're reducing your electrical use for the pumps. You're reducing your mowing, which means you're reducing your fuel. And at some point, you might even reduce a laborer, somebody who is having to spend that time mowing those areas.
And chemical costs as well.
Chemical costs would drop for sure. Although a lot of the areas that we're talking about doing, we don't really treat with much to begin with. Year 3, I think we try to do another green. In this example, I'm showing rebuilding number 6 green. It's another green that we have a hard time with when it gets very hot. It kind of sits on a slope, get a lot of water runoff. It sits there and bakes all day. So that would be one we would look at. Again, focus on some tee box reconstruction, some native grass area expansion, and then possibly do some bunker work. We're going to be modernizing playing surfaces. It improves the aesthetics of the golf course and reduces labor costs with the native areas. Year 4, get into some cart path modernization. So basically, we're going to expand on what we did in year 1, which is just some patching, and we're going to try to do bigger stretches. So hole 4 comes to mind. Hole 4 has a huge row of pine trees all the way up and down it, and the cart paths are in terrible shape there. The roots, pine trees have shallow root systems and they grow up high, so they come through and they buckle up our cart paths, and that's a spot that really needs to be addressed. 18's another spot. So maybe we hit the worst of the worst areas in this year. Again, we can look at native grass areas if that's something that's working for us. And we try to complete our irrigation updates in this year. So that means all the heads have been replaced by this point. Year 5, we get back to trying to do another green. 8 greens, one that I think about. 16 greens, another one that we might want to look at. By year 5, I think we would have to reevaluate what is needed the most at that point. Year 6, again, try to do another one. At that point, equipment lease purchase option comes due. So I think we look again at what's best, what's working best for the golf course. Do we purchase what we've got right now? Do we want to release? That's when that would come to. Year 7, we try to finish our cart paths up and have the whole golf course, everything paved by that point. We could also do some landscape improvements, some finishing work, just try to beautification of the course, basically. 8 and 9, again, we just continue some aesthetic upgrades. And we also look at replacing some non-lease equipment at that point. So non-lease equipment would be things like the swirl reliever, the top dresser, whatever is most pertinent at that point that we have to fix. And then year 10, maybe we do that 5th green that that we're looking at. I put on here green that most needs updating at this point. Continue good cultural practices, and then we might look at our staffing needs. Are we short on staff? Do we have too much staff? Most likely not, but I think to me, that's kind of what we should be looking at over a 10-year period instead of trying to do everything all at once, because we didn't get to this point all at once. It's happened over a very, very long time. It's not this board's fault. It's not any one person's fault. It's just happened over time. You can see it in other buildings around town. The golf course is not any different. So I think that we should look at doing it over time. Expected long-term results. We're talking lower maintenance labor, reduced water usage, improved drainage and turf health, lower annual maintenance costs, a higher golfer satisfaction, and we're going to draw more tourism in. Less water usage, reduced fertilizer needs, and a more naturalized landscape. I did put in a little example of a typical municipal golf course staffing structure. I pulled this using AI, to be honest with you. Did a little data mining. So the positions that I've got highlighted are the ones that I have budgeted in this example. The positions that are not highlighted are what you see at a lot of municipal golf courses. We're not asking for a ton of staff, but we are trying to have enough staff to operate in a way that we can give the product that everybody wants. So I just put that in there so you'd have an idea. We've been operating well understaffed for a long time. And for what we have to operate with, I think the golf course has been in honestly pretty good shape. It's not the best shape it's ever been in, no doubt about it. But I think if you actually read through this and start looking at what we've been dealing with for a long time, it's reasonable to say it's in pretty good shape. And then the last spot is just a kind of a graph of the 10-year, the reinvestment plan and how that works out over the years. So I guess I'll open it up to questions for anyone.
Good presentation.
I think this is extraordinary and I really appreciate the work you've put into it. I mean, this is just what I had in mind, as we're in budget season, we can plan ahead a little bit for a lot and know what to expect. Of course, to me, it's just abundantly clear that the 18 holes is the way to go. And I appreciate very much you making it so clear and helping us understand the options.
Sure.
Yeah, Brent, I really appreciate you taking the time to put together this plan. So just so it's clear, what would be needed to open up that front nine at this point?
Yes. So basically all we really need are to replace the two bridges and to get it, we'll have to do a budget amendment to get staff if we're going to open in this fiscal year. So for the next 3 months, have those bridges fixed and have the staffing to maintain everything.
Staffing.
Contract labor. So I put 45,000. When I did this, I was hoping we'd be farther along with the bridges than we are at this point. Might be a little bit less than that. So the farther we get into this fiscal year, the lower that number gets because it's later that I bring people in to work.
And Richard, I think we have already set aside in a dedicated fund some funds for bridge repairs. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that was, I believe, $100,000.
Yeah, I think so.
I know that we just bids closed, just a few minutes ago or a few hours ago, but do we have a general sense as to what those bids look like?
I think our lowest bid was $166,000. So I think we're at the point at the next April meeting, we ask you to reject all bids. And we'll find somebody that will build those bridges for less than $100,000. They're not $166,000 bridges. I mean, it's just, I think it's just absolutely ludicrous that we're getting those kind of bids. I mean, they're golf cart bridges.
Mm-hmm.
One is probably more expensive than the other, right? One's needs more work than the other, or no?
The 5 bridge is definitely.
The
worse shape
invoice
than the
to
3 bridge.
replace both bridges,
Right.
so.
But one
So,
is,
I think we can come back with something, you know, I'm in that 90 to $100,000 range.
okay. And Brent, we
And hopefully we'll have that for you by that April meeting.
we did receive a number of emails from people who have very much enjoyed using the front nine as a place to walk or run or exercise. What I can see how I can ask this question. Have you seen examples of courses that offer some sort of mixed use at certain hours, or have you considered any sort of possibilities of where that might be or how that might be possible?
I mean, the only, so here's what I'll say, for a lot of years now, we've allowed people to walk and run on the golf course early in the morning, or later in the evening. I could see something where 6 to 7 a.m. If you want to get out and run and walk, I don't really see a problem with that as long as it doesn't interfere with maintenance, because the guys are out working. It can't really become a hazard where someone gets hurt, or a rock comes out of a mower or something, or we don't see someone because it's so early in the morning. And then in the evenings, I could see something where you potentially stop play at 5:30. That's the last time that goes off the front side. That would have those holes at 3, 4, and 5 clear by about 6:30. If you wanted to expand the lake trail to walk on the cart paths after 6:30 on the front side, I could see something like that. But there would have to be rules in place where we don't have people riding bicycles across the greens. We don't have people throwing balls to their dogs across the greens, which, by the way, there is a leash law, so that would really have to be enforced. But we have worked around people walking the course during off times for a long time.
But maybe there'd be a way to kind of formalize notifying people when that is, so there'd be clarity about how to do that in a safe way.
Yeah, I think it has to be during non-peak hours. I think it would be something, an ordinance or something that you guys might have to put together. Because quite honestly, I have no authority to, I can go out and tell somebody to get off the golf course and they look at me and say, who are you? And I'm like, it's a good point, so it's, I don't know that I can come up with that. I can say that we would have to be careful, because if we're going to try to make enough revenue, I have to be careful when I close the golf course. So, again, early in the morning or later in the evening is when it's going to work the best.
Yeah, sure.
But I don't know that that's necessarily for me to decide.
Well, I think that if we were to discuss something like that, we would be looking at you to propose something.
Yeah, okay.
So that we
From a
would.
budgetary standpoint,
Yeah.
knowing the numbers
Mhm.
in a way that,
Yeah.
you live and breathe this, so.
Sure. So
It's helpful.
early morning, I in the last few years, I've tried to start opening a lot earlier. For a long time, the first tee time of the golf course was 8:02. We open at 7 a.m. now. And sometimes I send people out earlier than that in the middle of summer. It just depends. If it's a weekend and there's a lot of demand for play, I'll send them out at 6:45. So I don't want to start going back to that 8 o'clock time where we're losing, hour or 2 hours of tee times. But if we did something where we started at 7, there is a noise ordinance that begins at 7 o'clock or that ends at 7 o'clock. Maybe that's our first tee time, and that early morning time, if people want to get out and exercise, fine.
Well, I'm also hearing during different seasons, there's different trends, and so that might be something that we could
Sure.
look at, having some seasonal hours and accommodations.
Yeah. Well, there's less demand, in the in the wintertime, less demand when it's getting dark out earlier. So that might be something to look at.
I just wanted to make a comment about the hourly rate for the contract labor.
Mhm.
And I don't think there's any dispute about it, but I think it's real important to keep up with the going rate. I'm sure you're well aware that if you have different people coming every day to work, then they're using our equipment, which is very expensive. And maybe they never used it before. I mean, we're entrusting people with a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
And if they don't know anything about golf courses or whatnot, all I'm saying is let's keep up with that hourly rate, so we're not having a lot of turnover in
Sure.
the daily employees.
To speak to what you're talking about here, so we brought first staff back about 3.5 weeks ago, and we've been through 10 guys already. That means you're training someone new each time. You know, it usually takes a couple days to get them familiar with whatever piece of equipment we're going to have them on. Then you got to get them familiar with the golf course, you know, where to mow, what to avoid. So if you have 10 people over the course of a month, it's very difficult to manage.
That's not cost effective. That's pulling you from all your other things that you. can
Correct,
do.
yeah.
It's the same thing, it's a false economy to try to go
Yeah.
cheap on that if you're gonna constantly have to train in people.
Yeah.
So.
I wanted to ask, I didn't see where and I could have missed it, but where the maintenance building is in this structure, this kind of 10-year plan.
So we would really have to do that in the first year, but I didn't want to put the burden of the cost into this because we do have the $1 million as a grant money to pay for that.
Okay.
But we would need to get that going ASAP. I mean, you know, we constantly have some type of equipment breakdown. We really need to do maintenance cycles on the equipment that we've got now. You know, oil changes and filters and greasing, and we're trying to do that the best that we can. Grinding the reels, you know, but it's really difficult when you don't have a place to do it. You're missing most of your hand tools, and we don't have a welder anymore. So when something breaks, we can't fix it. And
Brent and his staff and several other town staff met with the architect this week. I think they finally got the message that we weren't looking for a Taj Mahal. We just need a maintenance building. I mean, their schedule was a lot different than the one Brent gave them. And I think they finally, you know, left thinking, okay, I know what y'all want now. What we need. I mean, you know, I wanted it's on what we needed. I think they finally got the message as to what
I think so too.
needed.
Good. Yeah. I mean, we want you to have a nice place to do your work, but it was very clear from those sketches that that was not speaking to the needs of.
Hey, didn't you have anywhere to, you know, park the equipment?
Yeah.
Yeah, the building that we're looking at is actually smaller than the building that we had. It's just laid out better.
Okay.
There's not a ton of wasted space. So I truly believe it can be built for under $1 million, but I don't build metal buildings, so.
I did want to ask you, Brett, if you know the anticipated impact at I think it's the 3rd tee where there's that work being done on the bridge on 9th Street. I know Duke has been dropping things in and,
Are
well,
you talking about the bridge replacement on 9th Street?
yes, the vehicular road bridge project,
Yeah.
not the cart.
Yeah, so I don't know that that's necessarily gonna impact us a great deal.
Okay, I couldn't tell how deep they were coming in.
So what they were doing was marking out right of way there.
Okay,
So they have a certain amount of right of way as a utility company.
okay. So you don't anticipate needing to close that portion?
If
while
we
they're
had to
doing-
do anything, what we would have to do is move the tee box forward
Okay.
while they were completing that work there.
Cool. I realized that hadn't come up in our discussions about the golf course, so I was curious to know
And-
that.
and-
I know they've been delayed. They thought they were gonna be done in like February or something,
Sure.
but now they're saying July.
We,
Last I heard.
we do have the stormwater project underway. It started yesterday. They're on the 5th hole.
Okay,
And that should be completed by, I think, the 22nd. So, of this month.
Is there any way we can go ahead, once that gets completed? Which you could eliminate that hole, you could just, or you put your tee box in front of where there were.
Mhm.
If we could open that up for walkers on the front nine before we get these bridges done so that we can.
I mean, I have no problem with that as long as I've got staff. Because at that point, you're talking about keeping all 18 holes playable. Right now, the front nine is getting mowed out about once a week. We typically mow fairways out 3 to 4 days a week. So I'm gonna have people to do that. I've got the mowers to do it, but I'm gonna have to have people to do it. So you kind of have to look at how much revenue are those walkers gonna bring in? Is it gonna pay for bringing these extra folks in? I just, I don't want it to be one of those things where, oh, we've got people out using it, they're walking, and it slows down the bridge repairs. You know, I assume see it just get done, we get it open and operating as an 18-hole course. But if that's what you guys want us to do, then
Walkers won't pay for your extra help.
yeah, we don't have that many walkers, so it's the lowest rate that we charge. So, you know, I'm paying somebody $25 an hour to be out there all day. I've got to have a lot of walkers.
Anybody else got any more questions? Anybody want to make any motions?
We don't need any right now. We just, you know, I want to give you that update. Well, and we should have some more information. We had the April meeting on the bridges and, you know, what it would cost to bring in extra help between now and July.
So what are the procurement rules around the guard bridges? I know that we've had the bids, we don't like them. Going forward, are there?
And now that we've gone through 2 separate bids, I think we could just, you know, find a, you know, person that will work with us on a reasonable cost. Maybe we modify what we propose, or we look at different options and everything, but I think we can find somebody. But you don't have to go back out to bid. I mean, we can do that on a, you know, down with a single, you know, person or a contractor around. So.
With the specifications that Brent has proposed with the handrails and ADA compliant.
You don't have to have handrails.
Yeah, I mean, what we need really is just a 16-inch high. It's kind of a curb that keeps people from driving off the edge, or the equipment from driving off the edge. So ADA rules, because of the width of the bridge, we don't necessarily have to have an actual handrail.
And it's flat, you know, walking up, you know.
It would still be ADA compliant.
It would be
because
ADA
of the
compliant.
width.
Correct.
Without a full.
What's
size.
that?
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
What I wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't clear to me at our last meeting,
Sure.
so that's good.
You don't need handrails.
Okay.
So is the board okay with just going ahead and let Richard get somebody to get these bridges done?
We'll bring you back something at the
He's
end
gonna
of the
bring-
meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, my goal is to have you an official talk about you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Brent.
Yes.
Thank you, Brett.
Next 2 items go hand in hand. We're, you know, since we moved items to the public safety building, we are incurring some expenses. We hope that FEMA is going to open this project back up. And if they do, they will cover all these costs. But as of yesterday, when we were still talking about this, FEMA was still closed, and we don't know how long it's gonna take them to get back open, but we do need some cash flow so we can pay some bills if we need to, and this just sort of sets aside some of those funds. But our hope and goal is that, you know, all those costs will ultimately be covered by FEMA.
All right, do I hear a motion to adopt this resolution?
I mean, you can do both of them in the same motion if you.
Yeah, I did want to ask a question, the Helene Fund unassigned fund balance allocation, so that's some that we already got for the EOC?
Yeah.
Okay. Great, thanks.
FEMA's been paying us a little bit long, but nothing like.
Okay, okay.
And somewhere, maybe what, next month, maybe this month, we can get a spreadsheet that shows all the projects, what's been paid, what we owe, what.
They will give you an update.
Good, all right. Someone want to make a motion and include both items in there?
Do we need to talk about the second one first, or is that enough?
Unless
They're
somebody
both the same, basically, one's a,
Yeah, I didn't know if there was any more you needed to say.
no, one is a capital project ordinance, and the other one is the actual budget ordinance, so I'm gonna just put the same thing.
Yeah, I'll make the motion that we adopt the capital project ordinance as presented and recommended, as well as approving the resolution for the budget amendment for the temporary public safety facilities project as presented and recommended.
Yeah, any more discussion? And this, most of this is coming from what Ridgecrest is charging. Well, we got 14 rooms at $60 a day.
I think 9 rooms there.
I don't know much about that project, but
Okay, well, at the April meeting, let us know exactly what this figures are. Not all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
And then one final item, Chad, if you can stand up and come to the front. I just want to introduce to you Chad Goins. He is our interim project manager. So I'm dumping stuff on him, getting him ready to get some of these projects moving.
Something this spread.
So
Get this spreadsheet for us so we know where we are, because we don't know where we are now. True.
so if you see him around, this is Chad. So.
Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Chad.
Thank you, Chad.
Okay, anybody got anything else?
Richard, if you wouldn't mind at the April meeting, if we could get an update from Chief Parker and Chief Coffey about how things are going with the temporary housing or temporary facility.
That's a great
The
answer.
fire department's happy. PD is not too happy right now there. Accommodation.
Well, we need to know that.
You got,
Yeah.
you know, morale issues, stuff. But
Yeah.
Right.
Any idea on the drilling? Core drilling?
They should be here by the end of next week or the first of that following week.
So another 2 weeks.
All the documents, they've been authorized to proceed, so.
Okay. And we're still making sure that that building is heated and air conditioned.
Yes.
Good. Bang, got anything else? Not all bad, that's all I'm saying. Say aye. Meeting adjourned.